Time seemed to stand still. Jeanette Osei's hand still extended. Daniel Wu, the CEO, shoved back, lost balance, and is stumbling backwards. His coffee is tilting, his face rapidly cycling through changes the way weather moves. First, the stillness, then the realization of what had just happened, followed closely by disbelief, recalibration, and finally the barely contained holy rage, the fury. All of this in a few short seconds, and no words uttered. The entire lobby of Cove Industries has gone silent and still, in the specific way that lobbies go silent when something happens that was never supposed to happen there, in this building, to this man, by this person. Just 2 minutes before that, the cameras had been rolling. Daniel Wu stood at the center of the lobby, coffee in hand, suit expensive and immaculate, walking a circle of journalists through Cove's next product cycle with the easy authority of a man who has never once lost a room. The lobby had been transformed overnight. A temporary stage set up against the far wall, branded panels, a lighting rig that costs more than Jeanette's annual stipend, journalists with lanyards different from hers, and investors she recognized from photos in her filing tasks. Catering staff moved through the edges with the practiced invisibility of people who understood their function. Felix, the janitor, was near the entrance, working quietly along the wall the way he always worked, unhurried, invisible, mop moving in long, steady strokes. Jeanette had caught his eye across the lobby when she arrived at 7:30. He gave her the small nod that had become their language for "I see you." She returned it. His folder was in her bag. Her phone had the photograph. 3 weeks ago, she sat on a kitchen floor and found a name in a filing, and everything since had been moving toward this day, this room, these people, all of them gathered in one place without knowing what else they were gathering for. Jeanette had found a position near the interns cluster. She opened her laptop and waited. Felix finally found the spill that had been gestured to him, a slow spread of liquid from an overturned catering glass near the temporary stage. Instinctively, he followed the spill with his mop, soaking it up. But this took him 6 feet to the left without thinking, leading him 3 feet directly into the camera frame. Felix was simply doing what Felix always did, head down, hands steady, the long, unhurried strokes of a man working with standards in his head. The cameraman lowered his equipment. "He's in the shot," he said, gesturing towards Felix. "Please like and hit the subscribe button, because what happened next froze the entire lobby." Daniel Wu turned. The moment he saw Felix, gray overalls, mop in hand, occupying the frame with the simple dignity of a man doing his work, something shifted behind Daniel's eyes. Not anger exactly, something colder and more efficient than anger. The expression of a man who has encountered an inconvenience that has developed the audacity to have a face. He crossed the lobby in 4 strides. "Do you have any idea what is happening right now?" His voice was low, which made it worse. The quiet register of a man who knows the room is listening and has decided the room is entirely his. Felix looked up, confused. "Go on. Get out. Get out of my frame. Get that bucket out of my lobby." Daniel pushed Felix forward. Felix, caught unprepared, stumbled forward onto one knee. He stayed there, very still, head down, shoulders up. absorbing it the way he absorbed everything, with the practiced total stillness of a man who used up his anger 3 years ago and has been running on something quieter and more durable ever since. Jeanette was 6 feet away. She watched Felix reach for the mop handle, watched his hands close around it, the engineer's hands, precise and careful, the hands that once filed structural reports and checked load-bearing calculations and tried 3 times to tell someone that 4 people were in danger. Those hands wrapped around a mop in a lobby full of people who were starting to look away in shame. Her letter would be signed in 3 weeks, which would enable her to get her dream job in Berlin. Her father's faith in her across 14 months of absence. If only she could contain the rage and indignation boiling inside her and remain quiet as she watched the horror unfold. She counted it all in the space of 2 seconds. Then she counted nothing. She took 3 huge steps forward, her hand connected with Daniel Wu's chest, open palm, not a fist, the motion of a person drawing a line in space rather than throwing a punch. She shoved him backwards. "That's enough!" Then Daniel's fury came, the particular outrage of a man who has just discovered that the room does not entirely belong to him anymore. The entire lobby froze. The janitor's bucket lay on its side, water spreading slowly across marble. Felix Cho, the janitor, is against the wall, head down, shoulders up. The posture of a man who has made himself small for so long it has become his shape. Everyone in the lobby is looking at Jeanette. Interns, executives, security, the journalists who arrived an hour ago for the product launch and did not expect to leave with this story as well. Every set of eyes in the lobby found the same place, the smallest person in the lobby, standing in the center of it, the least powerful person in the building, the only one who moved, Jeanette. She is 24 years old. She was on a 12-week internship. All she had ever wanted was the recommendation letter she would get at the end of the internship, and she was left with just 3 weeks. A funded research position was waiting for her in Berlin, and it depended entirely on getting that recommendation letter. None of these things had moved Jeanette to defend Felix. Something older did. Felix looked up. It was the first time in 3 years someone had ever stood up for him. Jeanette watched the recognition move across his face, not relief exactly. Something older and quieter than relief. The expression of a man who had stopped expecting the world to notice him and has just been told without a single word that he was wrong to stop. That's enough. 2 words, the quietest earthquake in the room. 3 months earlier. Jeanette Osei stands outside Cove Industries building for exactly 60 seconds before walking in. She counts them. Her father taught her that. Before you enter any room that matters, give yourself 60 seconds outside it. Breathe. Remember who sent you. But above all, remember who you are. She only had 1 carry-on luggage, navy blue, broken wheel on the left side. Inside, 3 formal outfits ironed the night before on the floor of her guest house room because there was no ironing board. A folder of certifications in a clear plastic sleeve. Her father's favorite book with his handwriting crowding the margins. And exactly enough money to last 3 months if she is careful with lunch. She is always careful with lunch. She is 24 years old, Ghanaian, first in her family to hold a postgraduate degree, first to leave the continent,
First, to stand on this particular pavement in Gangnam, looking up at 34 floors of glass and steel designed to make you feel the distance between yourself and the top. It works. She feels it. She picks up her bag and walks in anyway. Her father's voice, arriving not as memory but as instruction, the way it always does. The room will try to make you small. Stay tall on the inside. Her father, Emmanuel Osei, secondary school teacher in Accra, died 14 months ago on a Thursday, grading his students' papers, a red pen still in his hand. He never saw Seoul. He never saw this building. But he spent 24 years preparing her for every room she was never supposed to be in, not by telling her the world was fair, but by telling her she was exactly ready for it as it was. The lobby is marble and light, a reception desk the length of a classroom, a screen on the far wall cycling through product launches and keynote footage, Daniel Wu mid-sentence in every frame, the face of a man who has never once doubted a room welcomed him. Jeanette joins the visitors' queue. She is the only person in it with a broken wheel on her luggage. She does not care. To her left, a door opens. A man in gray overalls wheels a cleaning cart along the wall, navigating it to the edges the way people do when they have learned over a long time that the center of certain rooms was never meant for them. Jeanette notices him immediately. She has always noticed the people keeping to the edges. It is where she has spent most of her life. She does not know his name yet. She does not know what his hands used to build, or what was taken from him, or the folder he has been quietly keeping for 3 years in a staff locker on the second floor. She does not know any of it yet. She picks up her lanyard from the reception desk, clips it on, and follows the HR coordinator toward the elevator. Jeanette learns the building the way she has learned every institution that was not built for her, by its edges. Not the glass-walled boardrooms or the executive floor with its espresso machine and curated city view. The service corridors. The stairwell on the north side that nobody uses after 8 a.m. The small second-floor kitchen that the 8th floor does not know exists. The precise window between 6 and 7:15 a.m. when the building belongs to an entirely different set of people than it will at 9. She starts arriving at 6. The open-plan intern floor at full capacity, 11 people, 4 of whom speak loudly to perform confidence, is not a thinking environment. It is a performing environment. Jeanette does not perform well. She works well. Those are different buildings entirely. It is on the 4th morning that she sees him again. East Corridor, 3rd floor, 6:14 a.m. He is mopping in long, unhurried strokes, the kind that come from having done something so many times the body no longer needs instruction. Same gray overalls, same cart from the lobby on her first day. He moves the way people move when they have accepted being furniture, present, functional, unacknowledged. She almost walks past. Then she smells the tea. A thermos on the cart's lower rack, steel, dented on one side, the lid sitting loose. Ginger and something else she cannot name but recognizes from her grandmother's kitchen, the kind of smell that stops a person mid-step before the mind knows why. He notices her stopping. He does not seem alarmed. Curious, faintly, the way someone is curious who stopped expecting much from corridors a long time ago. His lanyard reads, Felix Cho, Building Services. She says good morning. He returns it. She asks about the tea. He considers her for a moment, not suspiciously, but carefully, the way a person measures whether a small kindness is still worth the energy, then lifts the thermos and pours a second cup into the lid. She takes it. Her father's voice, quietly. Never refuse tea from someone who offers it quietly. Quiet offerings cost the most. They do not speak much. The corridor holds the silence comfortably between them. But she watches his hands. Large, precise, unhurried. The hands of someone trained to measure tolerances and build load-bearing things, not to mop floors. He checks the baseboards after every stroke, not because anyone requires it, but because his standard is older than this job and has outlasted everything that took it from him. She files it away the way she files everything, carefully, completely, without yet knowing why it will matter. She does not ask, but she will.
It is the thermos that opens the door. By the second week, it is simply there, the lid already poured, sitting on the cart's lower rack at 6:14 a.m., waiting. No announcement, no ceremony. Felix does not look up from his mopping when she takes it. She does not make a production of thanking him. The arrangement settles between them, the way quiet arrangements do between people who understand that some things are better left unspoken before they become complicated. They talk about small things first, the weather, which in Seoul in October has a particular gray quality that Jeanette finds beautiful and says so. The second-floor kitchen, which Felix tells her has the best light in the building at 7 a.m. and the worst coffee at any hour. She laughs. He almost does. It is on a Friday morning, the end of week 3, that she asks. She has been careful with the question, measured it the way her father measured difficult conversations, come at it sideways, give the person room to decide how much they want to say. Your hands, she says, the way you check the baseboards, that's not a janitor's habit. Felix is quiet for long enough that she thinks she has misjudged the moment. Then, I was an engineer, mechanical, 17 years. He says it the way people state facts that used to be identities, flatly, without decoration, the emotion long since filed somewhere inaccessible. She waits. Her father taught her that silence after a confession is not emptiness, it is the person deciding whether to keep going. Felix keeps going. A factory, 3 years ago. A structural report he filed internally, load-bearing calculations, stress fractures in the support columns, numbers that did not lie even when the people reading them wanted them to. He filed it twice, escalated it once. The third time he tried, his access to the system was revoked, and his contract was terminated for performance insufficiency. A phrase so clean it almost hid what it was covering. 6 weeks after he was let go, a section of the factory floor collapsed. 4 workers. He says it without looking at her. 4. The report was never made public. The company settled quietly with the families. The engineer who raised the alarm was not mentioned in any filing because he was no longer an employee when it happened, and therefore, technically, not part of the story. He lifts the thermos, refills his own cup this time. His hands are steady. Jeanette sits with what he has given her, not the facts, the weight of them, the particular exhaustion of a man who did the right thing and was handed a mop. She does not say, "I'm sorry." She says, "I hear you." He nods once. They finish their tea. The building begins to fill around them. Neither of them mentions the name he did not say, the one that connects the factory, the buried report, and the 34-floor building they are both sitting inside. That comes later. Jeanette has always been a mapper. Her father called it her gift. Her university roommate called it exhausting. What it means practically is that Jeanette cannot enter a system without immediately cataloging how it operates, who holds weight, who absorbs it, which rules are written and which are architectural, built into the culture so deeply that nobody remembers deciding them. By week 4, she has mapped Cove Industries completely. Daniel Wu, 44, moves through the building like a climate, not a person arriving, but a condition changing. Conversations shift when he enters, postures adjust, junior staff find reasons to look at their screens. Even senior executives, the ones with their own glass offices and their own carefully managed silences, recalibrate slightly when Daniel is in the room. It is not fear exactly. It is the specific attentiveness of people who have learned that being noticed by him can go in more than one direction. Jeanette watches how he sees people, or more precisely, how he doesn't. It is not hostility. Hostility would require acknowledgement. What Daniel does is structural. He has arranged his attention the way buildings arrange load, certain people bearing weight invisibly so that the visible parts can look effortless. Executives are seen. Clients are seen. Press, investors, anyone whose perception affects his own, seen, clearly and immediately. Everyone else is infrastructure, practically invisible. Felix is infrastructure. She starts documenting it the way Felix once documented stress fractures, quietly, without announcement, because the habit of a careful person is to record things before they are needed, not after. Week 4, Monday. Daniel in the executive corridor, on a call, gesturing at Felix's cart without looking at it. Move that, it's in the way you gesture at a chair. Wednesday, a product meeting running long. Felix arrives to clean the boardroom according to schedule. Daniel, mid-sentence, waves him out with the back of his hand. Felix reverses the cart. Nobody in the meeting looks up. Felix's schedule now runs 40 minutes behind for the rest of the day. Friday, the one that stays with her. Daniel and 2 executives post-lunch, corridor outside the 3rd-floor kitchen. Felix is mopping nearby. Daniel says something. She does not catch the words, only the tone, the register of a man speaking about a piece of furniture that has developed an inconvenient habit of being present. The 2 executives laugh. Daniel moves on. Felix does not react. That is the part that stays with her, not the comment, the absence of reaction, the practiced total stillness of a man who absorbed the same thing yesterday and the day before, and has learned that reacting costs more than he has left to spend. She knows that stillness. She has worn it herself. That evening she opens her documentation, adds 3 entries, dates, times, descriptions, precise and without adjectives, the way Felix once wrote structural reports, because the facts, stated plainly, are damning enough without decoration. She does not yet know what she will do with it, but her father taught her, you record the truth before you need it, not after. After is always too late. Jeanette chooses her words the way she chooses everything, carefully, in advance, with contingencies. She spends Sunday evening at the 2nd-floor kitchen table, the one with the good morning light that is gray and flat at 9 p.m., drafting what she will say to HR. Not writing it down, her father taught her never to put something in writing before you understand what room it will enter, but arranging it in her mind, the sequence, the tone, professional,
specific, without accusation. She has dates, she has times, she has the precise adjectiveless descriptions she has been building for 2 weeks. She is not naive. She knows what HR departments are designed to protect, but she also knows that documented patterns, presented calmly by someone with nothing visibly personal at stake, are harder to dismiss than complaints that arrive with emotion attached. She requests the meeting for Monday, 10 a.m. The HR manager, Ji-yeon Park, 39, responds within the hour. Efficient. A good sign, Jeanette thinks. It is not a good sign. Ji-yeon listens. She is professional about it, the posture of a woman trained to receive difficult information without her face giving anything away. She lets Jeanette finish. She does not interrupt. When Jeanette is done, she folds her hands on the desk and says, "Mr. Cho has never filed a formal complaint. Without a complaint from the affected party, there is no case for HR to investigate." Jeanette asks what it would take for an observer to raise a concern formally. Ji-yeon says the concern has been noted. Then, quieter, not unkindly, the way people deliver verdicts they have practiced enough times to make sound like advice. "You're here for 12 weeks. You're doing well. If I were you, I'd focus on the internship." Jeanette thanks her, stands, smooths her jacket, walks out. She takes the north stairwell, the one nobody uses, down to the second floor and sits in the kitchen with no tea and no thermos and no father's voice that has the right thing to say for this particular situation. She already knew. That is the worst part. She mapped this building in week 1, and she already knew which doors were load-bearing and which ones were decoration, and she had gone through that door into HR anyway, knowing what Ji-yeon would most likely say, because she needed to be the kind of person who tried. She is still that person. She is also now the person sitting alone in a kitchen that the 8th floor does not know exists, understanding for the first time what it cost Felix to file a report 2 years ago, escalate it once, and then watch the door close so cleanly it left no mark. The next morning at 6:14, she takes the tea without a word. Felix looks at her face and does not ask. He already knows what closed doors look like. So does she. Please do like and subscribe to this channel. In the next chapter, Jeanette is about to discover a name that should not exist. It arrives the way the most important things always arrive, sideways, while she is looking at something else. Week 7. Jeanette is in the intern workroom at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before the floor fills, working through a due diligence brief she was assigned the previous afternoon. Corporate history, early investor records, Cove Industries' founding structure and capitalization timeline. It is the kind of task assigned to interns because it is tedious and requires no judgment, only the ability to read documents carefully and summarize them cleanly. Jeanette reads everything carefully. She is on page 11 of a 2019 investor filing when she sees it. A name. Listed as a silent early-stage investor, a minor equity position, exited quietly in 2021. 4 lines in a document designed to be skimmed. The kind of entry that disappears inside the larger architecture of a filing, the way a crack disappears inside a wall. Invisible unless you are looking at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right light. She is looking at exactly the right angle. She knows this name, not from any document she has read at Cove, from a Friday morning in week 3, from a thermos of ginger tea going cold between 2 people in an east corridor, from the particular flatness in Felix's voice when he said 4 workers and did not look at her. The name Felix did not say out loud, the one she heard anyway, underneath everything he told her, the shape of an absence in a story where someone had to be responsible and was never held to it. She sits very still. Her father used to say, when the truth arrives, don't perform surprise, just receive it and decide what to do next. She receives it. Then she goes back through the filing, methodically, the way Felix once checked the baseboards, not because anyone requires it, but because her standard is older than this internship and has nothing to do with the recommendation letter sitting 3 weeks from being signed. The investor entered in 2017, 2 years before the factory collapse, exited in 2021, the year the settlement with the 4 families was finalized and sealed. Clean entry, clean exit, no trail that announces itself. The kind of financial relationship that is not illegal to have and not illegal to dissolve, and is specifically structured so that nobody has to explain the timing to anyone. She closes the filing, opens it again, reads the name one more time to make sure she is not constructing a pattern from coincidence the way frightened people construct patterns from shadows. She is not frightened. She is precise. The pattern is real. She saves nothing to the company server. She takes a photograph of the page with her personal phone, closes the document, and sits for a moment with her hands flat on the desk. Then she picks up her bag, walks to the north stairwell, and goes down to the second-floor kitchen to wait for 6 a.m. to come back around. She has something to tell Felix. She needs the night to find the right words first.
She finds the right words by morning and then does not use them. Because when she reaches the east corridor at 6:14 and sees Felix's face, she understands immediately that something has already happened. He is mopping with the same unhurried strokes, the thermos in its place on the lower rack, everything externally the same. But there is a quality to his stillness that is different from the practiced kind she has learned to read over 7 weeks. This stillness is not absorbed, it is settled. The way a man looks when a thing he has been waiting for a long time has finally arrived and is exactly as bad as he expected. The lid is already poured. She takes it, sits on the floor with her back against the wall the way she has started doing, because the corridor has no chairs and neither of them has ever suggested finding some. He tells her without her asking. Thursday, he says, his contract is not being renewed. Budget restructuring, outsourced cleaning services, standard language in a standard letter delivered by a coordinator who did not make eye contact, effective in 2 weeks. She asks if he is going to fight it. He considers the question seriously, the way he considers everything. Then, on what grounds? My contract expired. They chose not to renew it. Legally, they've done nothing wrong. She wants to say, legally is not the only measure of wrong. She does not say it, because he already knows and has known for 3 years, and the knowing has not changed the outcome. She asks if he is angry. He is quiet for a moment. I've been angry, he says. Anger is expensive. I spent it all 3 years ago. She asks what he has left. He looks at the thermos, then at the corridor, then at his hands, the engineer's hands that check baseboards out of a standard older than any job they have held. He says, the record. She waits. He tells her he has been keeping it since the first month, dates,
times, incident descriptions, witnesses where available. Every dismissal, every redirection, every back-of-the-hand gesture, every comment made in a corridor to an audience that laughed. 3 years of entries, precise and emotional, written in the same format he once used for structural reports, because the habit of an engineer is to document everything, and the habit of a careful man is to document the things most likely to be denied. He goes to his locker on the 2nd floor and comes back with a folder. She opens it, reads the 1st page, then the 2nd. Then she tells him about the name in the filing. He is very still for a long time. The corridor hums around them. Somewhere above, the building is beginning to fill. Finally, he says, "I always knew it connected somewhere. I could never find where." She holds up her phone, shows him the photograph. He looks at it for a long time, then he closes his eyes briefly, not from shock, from the particular exhaustion of a man who has been carrying a weight he could not yet name and has just been handed the word for it. He hands her back the folder. "Then let's make sure it counts," he says.
The product launch is Cove Industries at full performance. Jeanette arrives at 7:30 a.m. to find the lobby already transformed. A temporary stage against the far wall, branded panels, a lighting rig that cost more than her annual stipend. Journalists with lanyards different from hers. Investors she recognizes from the filing she has been living inside for a week. Catering staff moving through the edges of the room with the practiced invisibility of people who understand their function. Felix is near the entrance, mop in hand, working quietly along the wall. She catches his eye across the lobby. He gives her the small nod that has become their language for "I see you." She returns it. His folder is in her bag. Her phone has the photograph. 3 weeks ago this morning, she sat on a kitchen floor and found a name in a filing, and everything since has been moving toward this day without her fully understanding why today specifically, until she is standing in this lobby watching it fill and understanding that the people who need to hear what she knows are all in this one room. She finds a position near the intern cluster, opens her laptop, and waits. Daniel Wu arrived at 9:47. The lobby responds the way it always responds, the subtle recalibration, the postures adjusting, the room reorganizing itself around his presence without being asked. He moves through it easily. The handshakes, the journalist introductions, the investor greetings, each interaction landing exactly where he intends it to. Then, midway across the lobby, a journalist spills a drink. Not dramatically, a cup tilting, liquid spreading near the temporary stage. The journalist is already apologizing, reaching for napkins that aren't there. Daniel turned, scanned the room, found Felix the way powerful men find the people designated to solve problems they don't want to think about. A gesture, not rude in isolation, devastating in accumulation, the back of the hand, a flick of the wrist, the motion you make towards something you do not need to look at directly. "Clean it up and get out of the frame before we start." Felix moved forward, scanning the floor for the spill gestured to him, head down, shoulders up. Then Daniel turned back to the journalist and said something. She caught every word, the tone of a man performing ease for an audience he has decided is entirely his.
Something about efficiency, about people who cannot manage basic schedules, the kind of sentence that wraps contempt in pleasantry and delivers it smiling. The journalist laughed politely. Daniel composed himself, a visible transformation that signaled that he was ready to start. Cameras started rolling. Felix finally found the spill that had been gestured to him, a slow spread of liquid from an overturned catering glass near the temporary stage. Instinctively, he followed the spill with his mop, soaking it up. Jeanette's letter is 3 weeks from being signed. Her Berlin position, her father's faith, 12 weeks of careful, precise, strategic invisibility leading to the letter, that single document that would change the direction of her life. She counts it all in the space of 2 seconds. Then she crosses the lobby. 3 steps. Her hand connects with Daniel Wu's chest, open palm, not a fist, the motion of a person drawing a line in space rather than throwing a punch. He stumbles backwards, his coffee tilts, his face moves through first the stillness, then the realization of what had just happened, followed closely by disbelief, recalibration, and finally the barely contained holy rage, the fury. The lobby freezes. Felix looked up. It was the first time in 3 years someone had ever stood up for him. Jeanette watched the recognition move across his face. Not relief exactly, something older and quieter than relief. The expression of a man who had stopped expecting the world to notice him and has just been told without a single word that he was wrong to stop. That's enough. 2 words, the quietest earthquake in the room. Jeanette stood between Felix and the man on his back foot and did not move.
Security arrives in 90 seconds. Jeanette counts them the way she counts everything, not from fear, from the habit of a person who has learned that precise information is the only reliable currency available to her in rooms like this one. 2 guards, professional, not rough. They do not touch her. They do not need to. She walks with them because creating a scene is not the same as making a point, and she has already made her point. Her badge is deactivated at the security desk while she watches. The coordinator does not make eye contact. The same coordinator who delivered Felix's non-renewal letter without looking at him, she realizes. Some people in buildings like this develop a professional blindness to the things they process. She signs a form she reads carefully before signing. Then she picks up her bag, 1 carry-on, navy blue, broken wheel on the left, and walks through the lobby and out the front door. The product launch continues behind her. She can hear it through the glass. She sits on the steps outside and puts her lanyard in her hands and looks at it. The photo, the badge, Jeanette Osei, Intern, Cove Industries, present tense, for approximately another 4 hours until the formal termination letter arrives by email, which it does at 2:17 p.m., CC'd to the Visa Coordination Office. She does not cry. Her father told her, crying is for after the work. Make sure there's work first. She is still deciding what the work is when she hears the door behind her. Felix, gray overalls, no cart. He sits beside her on the steps with the thermos in his hands. She does not know how he still has it, whether he went back for it specifically or simply carried it the way he carries everything, out of habit, out of the belief that some things are worth holding on to, regardless of what the day does to you. He pours. She takes the lid. The city moves in front of them.
Seoul at mid-morning, indifferent and enormous, the kind of city that does not pause for individual reckonings. He says, "I've been waiting 3 years to see someone do that." She says, "I've been waiting my whole life to be the someone who does that." They sit with that for a moment. It is not comfortable exactly. It is honest, which is a different thing. Then Felix reaches into the front pocket of his overalls and produces the folder, the same one from the second-floor locker. Dates, times, 3 years of precise, unemotional documentation. He holds it out. She looks at it, looks at him. He says, "You're no longer an intern, which means they can no longer manage you." She takes the folder. Her father's voice, arriving the way it always arrives, not as memory, but as instruction. "The room will try to make you small. Stay tall on the inside." She has just lost the letter, the position, the plan, and the 12 weeks of strategic invisibility she built to protect all 3. But she is the tallest she has ever been. "Then let's make sure it counts," she says. He nods once. They finish their tea. The steps are cold beneath them, and neither of them moves. There is work to do.
The journalist's name is Park Soo-yeon. Jeanette remembers her from the product launch. Third row, navy blazer, the one who asked Daniel the follow-up question he deflected twice before answering a different question entirely. A woman who notices when an answer does not match its question. Jeanette had filed that away at the time without knowing why. She knows why now. She finds the contact details on the journalist's publication page that evening, sitting cross-legged on her guest house bed, with Felix's folder open beside her laptop and her father's book spine up on the pillow. She drafts the email 3 times. The first is too emotional. The second is too clinical. The third is her father's voice, direct, specific, without performance. She attaches the photograph of the filing. She references the folder. She does not overstate what she has. She lets the facts carry their own weight, because facts, stated plainly, do not need assistance. She sends it at 11:43 p.m. and does not sleep well and does not expect to. Park Soo-yeon responds at 6:08 a.m. They meet that afternoon in a cafe 2 streets from Cove Industries, close enough to feel like reclaiming something. Jeanette brings the folder. Felix comes with her, which was not the plan until this morning when he appeared at her guest house door with his thermos and his coat and said nothing that required saying. Soo-yeon reads the folder slowly. She asks precise questions and writes the answers in a notebook with a green cover. She photographs the filing page. She asks Felix about the factory with the careful steadiness of a person who has sat across from difficult testimony before and understands that the most important thing she can offer is the space to finish a sentence. Felix finishes every sentence. The piece publishes 11 days later. It is not a small piece. Soo-yeon has spent 11 days pulling the thread Jeanette handed her, the investor exit timing, the settlement seals, the 4 workers named in print for the first time since the factory collapse, the connection between the buried safety report and Cove Industries' founding capital, the 3-year paper trail in a folder kept in a staff locker on the 2nd floor of a building that never once considered looking inside it. The headline does not mention Daniel Wu first. It mentions the 4 workers first. Jeanette reads that and has to put her phone down for a moment. Cove Industries releases a statement, then a second statement correcting the first. Daniel Wu's legal team issues a response. A regulatory body announces a preliminary inquiry.
These things move slowly, and Jeanette has learned enough about institutions to know that slowly is not the same as never. Felix is contacted by a safety advocacy organization that has been fighting the original case for 3 years without the piece of the puzzle that was sitting in a staff locker. He accepts their offer the same afternoon, quietly, the way he accepts everything worth accepting. 6 weeks after the steps outside Cove Industries, Jeanette receives an email. A professor, Berlin, the Research Institute. He writes that he read the piece, not the one about the shove, which ran in 3 outlets under variations of billionaire CEO pushed by an intern, and generated the kind of comments she stopped reading after the first afternoon, but Soo-yeon's full investigation, which ran to 4,000 words and named every name that needed naming. The position, he writes, is still available. He has reviewed her certifications, her postgraduate work, her published research. He adds one line that she reads 4 times before she believes it. Character, I have found, matters more than a reference. Yours has been demonstrated at considerable personal cost to you. That is the kind of researcher I want in my institution. She opens her father's book. His handwriting in the margins, familiar as his voice. She finds the page she has been looking for without knowing she was looking for it. A passage she underlined twice and starred and wrote 3 words beside in his careful teacher's hand. She was ready. She writes back to the professor, accepts the position, books the flight. Then she calls Felix. He was still working there. They had renewed his contract after the scandal broke, something about image of the company and possibility of reinstatement if the investigation clears him of wrongdoing. She tells him. He is quiet for a moment in the way she has learned means he is receiving something he did not let himself expect. He says, "Your father would have been insufferably proud." She laughs. It fills the small guest-house room like something that had been waiting behind a closed door and has finally, completely, broken it down. She has one bag, navy blue, broken wheel on the left side that she has been meaning to fix for 2 years.
She decides to leave it broken. It got her this far. It will surely get her a little bit further. If you have come this far, thank you for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing as Felix and Jeanette share their last cup of tea together. She is there before him for the first time. 6:02 a.m., East Corridor, 3rd floor. Jeanette sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. She had taken a chance to come here, and night shift security at the lobby had buzzed her in without even looking up. She knew they would. They always did in the weeks she worked here. Her carry-on sat beside her, navy blue, broken wheel on the left. Her flight bag on her shoulder, her father's book in her lap. The corridor is empty and humming and exactly as gray as it was on the first Tuesday she found him here. It felt like an entire life ago. She hears the cart before she sees him, the familiar rhythm of it, the slight drag on the left wheel that mirrors her own luggage so precisely she noticed it in week 2 and never mentioned it. Felix rounds the corner, sees her, and stops. He was not expecting her. He looks at the carry-on, her flight bag on her shoulder, her father's book in her lap. Then he looks at her. She speaks with a smile. "I wanted to say goodbye here." He nods once, slowly, the way he receives things worth receiving. He parks the cart, reaches for the thermos on the lower rack, steel, dented on one side, the lid already loose, and lowers himself to the floor beside her with the careful deliberateness of a 68-year-old man who has been on his feet since 4 a.m. and does not make a performance of what it costs him.
He pours, hands her the lid. She takes it with both hands the way she had every morning for 8 weeks, and for a moment neither of them says anything because the corridor said enough. The hum of the ventilation, the distant elevator beginning its first run of the day, the building warming itself up around 2 people sitting on its floor one last time. The tea is ginger. It is always ginger. She did not ask until week 5, and he said simply, "My wife's recipe." She did not ask anything further, and he did not offer it, and the information sits between them now, quiet and complete, one of the many things they know about each other that were never fully explained and did not need to be. She opens her father's book, finds the page, holds it out so he can read the underlined passage, the star, the 3 words in the margin. She was ready, in Jeanette Osei's careful teacher's hand. Felix reads it, then reads it again. He says, "He knew before you did." She says, "He always did." Felix reaches into his overalls pocket and produces something she has not seen before, a small folded piece of paper, worn at the creases, handled many times. He opens it and hands it to her. A name, an address, the Safety Advocacy Organization, handwritten, with a phone number beneath it and a date, 3 years ago, the week after he was let go. Someone gave him this, and he carried it all this time without using it, waiting, she understands now, for the moment when using it would mean something more than just finding somewhere to put his anger. She looks at it, looks at him. He says, "I was waiting until the record was complete." She folds it carefully and puts it in his top pocket and pats it once, the way her grandmother used to pat things into place, firmly, finally, with the authority of a woman who has decided something is finally settled. The building is filling above them. She can hear it, the elevators multiplying, the ventilation shifting register, the particular acoustic change of a building moving from night to day, from Felix's hours to everyone else's. She finishes her tea, sets the lid down on the floor between them for the last time. He says, "Go build something." She picks up her bag, stands up, looks at him one last time, 68 years old, gray overalls, engineer's hands, 3 years of careful documentation, a thermos that never once ran empty in 8 weeks of 6:14 a.m. mornings. She says, "Thank you for the tea." He says, "Thank you for sitting down." She walks to the elevator, does not look back, not because she is not moved, but because her father taught her that some exits need to be clean, that looking back in the wrong moment makes a thing smaller than it was. The elevator opens. She steps in. The doors close. The east corridor is quiet again. Felix sits for another moment on the floor, thermos in his lap, the good silence of a man who has given something away and feels lighter for it. Then he gets up slowly, reaches for the cart, and begins to mop in the long, unhurried strokes that have nothing to do with this job and everything to do with who he was before it and who he is still underneath it. He checks the baseboards after every stroke. Nobody requires it. He does it anyway.
In the gilded underworld, no secret remains buried forever. The truth always comes into the light eventually.